Hey everybody, welcome to Raw Real Politics, where we the people have had a podcast. This is the first episode here on June 7th, 2024. I am totally excited to be here. My name is Ty Jensen. I am the author, owner, and founder of Raw Real Politics and RawRealPolitics.com. I am just super excited to be able to enter the discussion to where we need to have these everyday discussions about our political life as far as social, cultural, and political concerns that need we the people. But it's not just that. We are in a political year. This is a huge political climate, and it's going to come down to basically the establishment versus the American first. It's going to be the Democrats versus the polarization of the socialist agenda. We basically got four different parties running on two major tickets. Now, as crazy as that sounds, it's really not that crazy at all, especially when you have super polarization with President Trump, in which we support here at Raw Real, including myself, and we also have a polarization with the left and the Biden campaign, who is currently in office, sadly. But are we going to really keep going down this path of destruction with this administration, with a president who literally poops himself in front of foreign prime ministers and foreign executives? We can no longer have that, and we need President Trump back in office. But I don't want this podcast to sit here and be all Trump all the time. While he does a lot of good things and says maybe some dumb things that we're going to point out over the course of the next 5 months during now in the election. However, we just want to point this out that we are on the Trump bandwagon, and really not a bandwagon. We are in total support of President Trump to get reelected. And that's the matter of fact, and that's the flat out what it is. But we got some stories to cover today, and some of the stories we got to cover is this first one, which is, do ads really work traditional versus social media, and do they really work, especially with the generations? Now, we've seen a lot of the older generation, basically the boomers. A lot of traditional ads, TV, radio, they work for them. But do they work for the rest of the American people, especially with Gen X, with Gen Z, especially not with Gen Z, and will they work with Gen Alpha, especially when TV and radio are starting to become obsolete? Now, we have streaming services. Now, a lot of ads could go towards those streaming services, and rightfully so, because streaming services are one of those things that are the nuance. They're here to stay. They're not going anywhere, as traditional TV, your major cable companies are starting to see the end of the tunnel and going into the black, and not in the good way. They're starting to see the death toll, because not everybody wants to pay the enormous fees that come with a Comcast, a Centricom, with any other digital TV rights as far as that's concerned, especially YouTube TV, when they up their ante, trying to take into the new digital market while staying with traditional means. However, when it comes down to the social media, a lot of people are starting to go, especially with the millennials, and we're starting to see Gen Z, and then even Gen Alpha, who was brought up in these situations, they're going to gravitate towards the newest, latest, and greatest when it comes to social media and social media marketing. We see a lot of it on Facebook, Instagram, especially TikTok. TikTok is huge in the game, and we're starting to see other areas as well. But YouTube and Rumble, which we support, which we are on as far as platforms, a lot of these newer generations, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, are going to rely on the information that comes out on those sources. But when it comes to traditional media, we're talking about a very small fraction of the boomer generation who is reliant on those traditional ways. Now, I don't know about you guys, and let me know in the comments below. Do you listen to, basically podcasts on AM or FM radio anymore, especially during drive time, or do you just plug in your Android or iPhone and go to your podcast center, whichever one you have, and just hit play? And I know a lot of these older traditional platforms are starting to make their way onto those platforms, especially with the phone services, but do you really, like, I don't know anybody in today's generation who is sitting there in drive time, whether you're in New York, LA, Salt Lake City, Denver, Albuquerque, or whether you're in Charlotte or wherever, is going to sit here and be like, hey, we got to catch that show on the FM dial on the drive home at 5:30. I don't know anybody that's sitting here doing that. I think what a lot of people do, they get to their cars and they're trying to drive home, or they're just out and about going to the store, and they're sitting here like, oh man, I want to hear my latest podcast, and they're going to click on it. They're going to do that through, either means of Bluetooth or wireless, or maybe a straight connection between their phone and the vehicle. But I don't know anybody who's going to sit here and go to traditional radio anymore and sit here and be like, oh, I got to catch that so-and-so show, and they're going to bring on certain people. More and more candidates, more and more politicians, more and more social episodes, and more cultural devices are sitting here being in the mainstream when it comes to more modern technology with cell phones. Back when I was in college, and this is a long time ago, this is 20 years, we had the iPods, and we had iPod shuffles, and we could download music onto those, and those were the greatest thing. And we switching from younger millennials and even mid-age millennials like myself at 42, we started to switch over. And so we kind of saw the death that was coming for traditional media. But the boomers, they're starting to be a class to where they still rely heavily. And I don't know why. They still rely heavily because that's the way they knew, that's the way they grew up. They still plan on listening to a certain show or program on traditional radio. Now, when it comes to TV, we all know that we all have watch times, and these watch times are very basically in the evening and early morning, and that's where a lot of political stuff is going to happen as far as commercials. But I don't know very many people that are starting to, especially candidate-wise, that are going to say, you know what, ABC, NBC, Fox News affiliates, and let's go to, CNN and MSNBC, and let's put a 30-second ad on those networks now. I don't know anybody who's starting to keep relying on that. Of course, the older generation does tend to vote more, but when it comes to media and trying to get your message out there, a lot of these candidates and political figures, and especially in the presidential races, especially this year, are starting to lean towards social media. We're seeing Facebook ads, Instagram ads, live streams. We're starting to see uptakes on TikTok, and various brands like TikTok, especially where they can reach a lot broader of a base and a lot broader of a recruitment as far as into their platforms, rather than seeing traditional media where it might be a nuance and you have to watch the TV. Now, if you're watching TV during the Super Bowl, you're going to pay attention to those traditional ads and ads as far as revenue streams and stuff like that, and maybe product placement. You're going to tune into that, but this isn't the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is not every day. So I'm going to know your comments down below of what you think of traditional media versus social media, and how it has the impact on the different generations especially, and are they effective? That's the biggest thing, is are they actually effective, and do you take those ads into consideration, especially during an election cycle or an election cycle year like 2024, or even in a midterm like 22 or 26, which is in 2 years. Now, we have another story, and I think this story is absolutely mind-boggling to me, and I don't know, I'm going to hear your thoughts on this as well, is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Now, I don't know if this is a local level or if it's a program funded through state means, or if maybe their state legislature has set aside allocations for funds for this, but what they're going to do in Cambridge for nonviolent crimes, for nonviolent offenses being committed, basically misdemeanors, they want to send out social workers to to engage in these nonviolent call-outs through 911 instead of dispatching police. Now, I don't know about you guys. I think that is absolutely just crazy. It is batshit crazy. Yeah, let's get a call 911. Hey, my boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever, they're arguing here in the background. Could you send over a social worker? Send no one ever. What in the leftist mind of this Neanderthal bullshit is going on here where we're going to sit here and call a social worker? Like, a damn social worker isn't going to de-escalate anything. They're not going to sit here and be like, okay, now I hear your concerns. I see that you guys are frustrated, but can we just take a deep breath? Where a police officer's going to go in there and be like, oi! Hey! You separate. We'll talk to both of you independently. When you two shut the hell up, you go your separate ways. You go over here, you go over there. Alright? And not one word to each other. That is how you're going to de-escalate, because there is basically a threat of being incarcerated and maybe taken to jail, or maybe put in a holding cell for a minute where you don't want to be booked on any charges, especially misdemeanor charges. But with this new thing that Cambridge is doing, they want to send out a social worker. I don't think that it's going to work. I think it's just going to cause more tension. And if that social worker cannot de-escalate a situation, that situation could then again become violent or deadly, where the police will have to be called officially. So why not just send the police out there to do it in the first place? But I want to know what your thoughts are. I want to know exactly what you're thinking as far as, would you approve of your state or your legislature or your city, town, county? Would you agree to have a social worker that has a social work background come out to a non-violent that could possibly turn violent, but would you okay that with any political means of allocating funds for social workers to go out for non-violent calls instead of basically the police going out? Anyway, again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And we have to move on to this third segment, which is the middle class is struggling. Well, of course the middle class is struggling. This was on the Hill. And it has to do with political divide. Right now the middle class is struggling, because they wanted this class warfare where there would be the rich and then the poor, and then we're going to eradicate everything here in the middle. So any part of the working class who is not in the working poor or poverty, we want to eliminate, because they can have free expression and free thought when it comes to elections and elected officials' futures. That's basically what's going to come down to. But the middle class is struggling, where some articles that are coming out saying the middle class is thriving. Where the hell is this middle class? I mean, it is basically a dumpster fire at this point. The middle class with this super high inflation, because Biden himself said, we're going to get rid of fossil fuels. We're going to get rid of the XL Keystone Pipeline. And when he signed that executive order, that gave a signal out to all the petrol companies, which then sent a signal out to all the goods, services, and product manufacturers to say, oh, well, if we can't get our product and or service to market, we're going to lose revenue, so we got to jack up prices. Therefore, everything in the entire world went up with that signing of that legislation. But do the Biden administration know? Because they care more about feelings, not facts. And remember, just like Ben Shapiro, and just like we say, facts don't care about your feelings, and neither do we. We do not care that, oh my gosh, you're saving so much on carbon emissions. Oh my gosh, you're saving, fossil fuels, and we need to protect the earth. And, the earth is fine. But who is not fine is the people that are a direct correlation to those bills, to those signings, which is the middle class. A couple of years ago, you could buy a $300,000 house, which is now 30 to 40% higher. So now you're looking at $500,000 to $550,000 for a house that 4 years ago, or even 5 years ago, was a simple $300,000, and you can easily get that 20% because the cost of goods and services were a lot cheaper. Housing and housing affordability is one of the biggest drivers of this economy, which is lack thereof. Not only that, is the food cost. When you jack up food costs, which you have to eat to survive as a human species, when you drive up that and there is super wage stagnation, you're looking for a super inflationary rate of a lot of point. I mean, we're talking anywhere between 9% to 28%. Now, anybody that tells you that it's only 3 to 8%, they're full of shit, and we're going to call it out right now. This puppy is between, depending on what it is between 9% higher than it was 4 years ago, all the way up to almost 30% higher overall with the inflationary rates. Now, some Democrats are going to probably hop on here, bash me in the comments, sit here and say, well, no, it's really not that bad. Biden's doing a great job. Dude, Biden has killed the middle class. You really need to deject the head out of your ass and realize that you directly, your friends and family, all your neighbors and their neighbors are directly poor because of this presidency. Okay? Mr. I poop my pants in front of, foreign leaders is not there. Like I said the other day, he is one ice cream cone away from having a full-on stroke and being dead. Now, that's not just my take. That is pretty much all political, insiders like myself. We sit here and we say this not enthusiastically. We're not jumping for joy over this. We're calling it like he is. He's 80-something years old. He's in his early 80s. He's basically banging on death's door, and he's one stroke away with an ice cream cone in his hand from just dying. That and the fact that he soils himself all the time. There's an early sign of dementia. It's not even an early sign. He's probably got full-on dementia, but he has all the handlers around him to make him seem like he is very well taken care of. He's got the perfect meds. He's got the perfect life. Those are all the handlers doing this, and they can jack him up for maybe 5 minutes at best. Other than that, he's going to go back to soiling his depends. But right now, the middle class is struggling, and the only way that the middle class stops struggling is with the November 5th election and voting in Donald Trump. And if you sit here and say, well, Biden's done a good job, he should have another term, you're batshit crazy. If you think the RFK, who's running as an independent for the presidency, is going to, change any of the policies that the Biden administration has done, he might change a few, but he's not going to change a lot of them. The country will still be in a downward spiral shithole than it is now. But if you want to see change for the better, the only way to do that is to vote on November 5th for President Trump. And this is for all 50 states and every jurisdiction, every county, every city. You've got to vote President Trump in and make sure that every county is going to be aligned with voter registrations that are correct. But as I say, that with Biden not being very particular on this fourth segment here, is Biden is facing growing worrying signs of uncommitted vote due to age and health. And of course, this is off the hill as well. But it's very true. His age is a factor in who we vote for. Now, everybody can look at President Trump, and he's in his late 70s. Now, obviously, but he's still farther better off physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and especially socially, more intact than President Biden. Now, we can sit here and say other things like the uncommitted vote. And yes, that's the uncommitted vote because of the economy. People are going to vote with their wallets, and there's no way around that. It's just going to happen that way. This is all about facing economic downturn and try to have an economic uproar in 2025. There's no other way around that. Now, if Trump wins in November, right, before any election is certified in December, going into the new year, if he wins on November 5th, I can guarantee the NASDAQ, the Dow, and the S&P 500, the S&P 100 is going to have a major uptick on November 6th. The day after the election, we are going to see record high margins of amazingness when it comes down to the economy. You're going to see people have hope in their eyes. Right now, when hope is all but lost, it's basically dead. It's knocking on death's door. But anyway, again, besides Biden's failures, we all know them, besides the fact that he poops his pants, I want to know what your thoughts are in the comments going into this election, because this is a massive election. This election is one of the biggest elections we're probably going to have in our lifetime, because this will set the precedent of, are we going to have a bright future where there's no wars, where there's a striving economy, where there's jobs and growth, or are we going to keep going down this false utopia where it's going to be a one world government, central bank digital currency, authoritarianism? And that's what we are facing right now, right here, every single day in this nation. And we got to change it. We got to change it right now. Anyway, we're going to move on to our fifth segment, and this is actually a really fun segment. This is called This Day in History. Now, we've had a lot of things go right in this country, well, a lot of things that went wrong, but this day in history, we're going to start with 1843, where Susan Blow is born. She was the first American educator who pioneered kindergarten. That's actually really cool to know that, actually. In 1892, Creole shoemaker Homer Plessy buys whites-only train ticket in New Orleans in act of civil disobedience. Results in the landmark U.S. Supreme Court case Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, sorry. That's actually a pretty big deal, actually, because it really set a precedence for civil disobedience when it comes to racial divide. Now, in 1909, Virginia Aguilar is born. She was the first American anesthesiologist. She developed a system of healthcare providers used to elevate an infant soon after birth. I don't think evaluate is the right word, but that's just what it has. Now, we're going to turn on to 1954, with Alan Turing dies by suicide at age 41. You can look him up. Use Google, Safari, whatever you want to use. We got 1865, the Supreme Court of the United States decides on Griswold versus Connecticut, eventually legalizing the use of contraception by married couples. Okay, that's crazy, that's random, whatever, it is what it is. On to 1979, with Texas passed the bill becoming the first state in the nation to make Juneteenth an official state holiday. Now, Juneteenth was popularized a few years ago, but it wasn't until Texas passed the bill in 1979 that Juneteenth took effect, and now it's all over the United States. And we're going to see here that later this month. We got 1980, the U.S. government dedicated its first solar power plant at Natural Bridge National Monument in my state of Utah. The array of over 250,000 solar cells provided power to the park's facility. Now, I am not a huge proponent of solar energy because I don't believe the technology is quite harnessed in there yet. It could be a step in the right future, but I really doubt it. You might as well just have fusion energy at this point. Fusion, carbon capture, and so on and so forth. However, this next one is from 1998, where James Byrd Jr. is dragged to death by Sean Allen Berry, Lawrence Russell Brewer, and John William King in Jasper, Texas, in a racially motivated hate crime. How crazy is that? And that wasn't too long ago. 1998 we think is a long time, but it really wasn't that long ago, unless you're a Gen Zer. It's really not that long ago, but that was this day in history. Again, thank you for listening to Raw Real Politics. We the People have had enough podcast. This is our first episode, and we got a lot more episodes to come, so please don't judge us too harshly on this first episode of June 7th, 2024 because it's going to get better from here on out. Anyway, I'm your host, Ty Jensen. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and we will catch you next time.